Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Body Bag Podcast. I'm your host, Broke Rider Dave. As always, my co-host, Chris Thomas. And today we have a special guest with us today. Horror author, Fear and the Kitchen Sink, Spencer Hamilton.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for
We're
coming
happy
on.
you're here, yeah. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I mean, hey, any excuse to shoot the shit about horror movies, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's why I'm so upset that we only do one or two of these a week, because it just never seems like enough.
I feel the same way, yeah. So, Spencer, you've published Fear and the Kitchen Sink, and you have another book coming out. Is that right?
Yeah. I've recently put a free book up on my website with the newsletter called Welcome to Smileyland. It's a slasher taking place in an abandoned amusement park, and so I've been kind of playing in that sphere and building more works in the Smileyland world. So that should be what comes next.
Oh, so is that going to be an actual universe you're building?
Yeah. It was just going to be a one-off because I love slashers, and I've started reading a lot of Stephen Graham Jones, who is kind of like the slasher expert in the author sphere, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to, try my own hand at it, and readers really responded to it. And I just didn't want to say goodbye to the world. So it just, grew from there.
That's got to be a big undertaking, like building your own universe.
It really is. Yeah. It's like, trying to make your own MCU, but with death.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah, it sounds exciting.
Is that the graphic novel, or is that a separate? Because I saw you're part of a graphic novel, if I'm not mistaken. I saw that on your website.
Yeah, so the graphic novel is actually where Smileyland started. It was more just a comic that was published in Spine magazine last year, just like a 3-page thing where I was playing around with the Smileyland world. And that's when I decided I wanted to write more of it. So we're going to bring the graphic novel back into it in a bigger way sometime in the future. But for now, it's just the books.
That's really exciting. That's definitely going to be my next read.
That's pretty awesome. I'm sorry if you guys are hearing noise over here. We have a thunderstorm and my cat's freaking out. So
you know what? That'll just add to the ambience of this horror podcast. Nice thunderstorm, cat scared in the background. That's awesome. Although, yes, I do hope the cat's okay.
Yeah, and it's kind of a perfect transition in a way because a thunderstorm. That's how the mist kicks off.
Yes, it is.
I just have a couple more questions for you about Fear. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
So my first question is, it's one of the scenes either in the first or second chapter where Jack and Ash, they go and see Jaws at the theater.
In the Fear, okay.
Yeah, they go and it's like a drive-in in Austin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're walking back and they're like harassed and like physically assaulted by who becomes the Cardigan Man.
Mm-hmm.
Like that scene like made me so angry.
Good.
Like honestly, like I don't know how his friends like stood back. Cause, like when my friends did that, I'd fight my friend because that's not okay. But when you're writing a scene like that, like how do you get into like the mindset to write something along those lines?
Well, I think the Fear is its own particular case for me because at the time of writing it, I wrote it in the first few months of the COVID pandemic, and I had just moved to Austin myself, where the book takes place.
Okay.
So I was kind of using the book as kind of my own catharsis and therapy and way to like not go insane in quarantine. One of the first things that happened when I moved to Austin was there was a screening down at the river of Meg. The Meg movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know, when I started writing The Fear, it seemed like a perfect way for Ash and Jack to be introduced to Austin in a horror movie, but I did not want to use the Meg for reasons of it's not a great movie.
Yeah, Jaws is a way better choice. I agree with you there.
Yeah, so
not even for like it's a ridiculous have fun kind of movie. Like,
well, I mean, I'm right there with you. When I saw the Meg, I did have a blast, you know. So there's definitely value to that, but in terms of, when you're writing a novel, the things that your characters go through, typically you want them to build on thematic elements that you weave through it. So I very quickly realized that if I went with Jaws, Jaws uses brilliantly, it uses our fear throughout. I think I heard a quote just yesterday that said, "We're not afraid of being alone in the dark. We're afraid of not being alone in the dark."
I like
And
that.
essentially, it's the idea that we're afraid of what we can't see. And I think Spielberg, whether it's on purpose or accidentally, since the shark bot was broken throughout filming, Spielberg uses what's not on the screen to just perfect effect.
I respect any storyteller who plays with what's not on screen and just they rely on the audience's fear, anticipation, and tension rather than like a boo or a jump scare or something gross on screen. But what you're not seeing, and it's because what you see in your mind will always be 20 times worse than what will actually be on the screen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I also think there's value to constraints for a creator. So like Spielberg, for example, he was almost forced to not show the shark as much because of a broken robot. And then The Mist had a just horribly low budget, and so they had to be really creative with how they built suspense, like the rope that the biker dude goes out on. That I find that sequence terrifying, and you don't see a single creature. All it is a nylon rope,
You wouldn't think that it had a small budget given the cast that it had.
Right. Well, I mean, hey, that's probably where a lot of the budget went,
Probably. On a side thing, I like that you keep bringing up that there was always problems going on with the Jaws robot. A little side thing. You know what it was nicknamed, right?
I can't remember.
On set that they nicknamed it Flaws because there was so much horrible stuff going on. They could not get the shark to work for the life of them, so they kept calling it Flaws and not Jaws.
That's brilliant.
That's awesome, yeah.
I love that. But yeah, so a lot of times those kind of constraints almost force the creativity to, go into overdrive, and creative problem solving can just yield great results. And I think that's true with Jaws. I think it's true with my own book. I think it's true with The Mist. It's interesting as a storyteller to see how that affects the final product.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Question number 2. I really like the way how you told the relationship between Jack and Ash, because it's not like a perfect relationship. There's some doubts. It's messy. It's kind of real and relatable. So, how did that come about? Was it like real life experiences or media experience?
Yeah, well, as a writer, I kind of pull through all different parts of my life and what I observe around me as I write. So at the time, my partner and I were quarantining, and so I certainly was seeing how quarantine affects partnerships. I think divorce rates went through the roof and all that. But I mean, my partner and I grew a lot stronger through the pandemic, so I was able to kind of channel the what ifs into my writing. And I think with Jack and Ash specifically, I really fell in love with those characters. I really feel for what they were going through. And I think a big part of Ash's character specifically came up through the writing. Originally Jack was going to be the main character, and Ash was just going to have little blog posts throughout, but the majority of the book was going to be Jack's POV. And that changed very quickly because I realized that in a way, the fear is Ash's story more than it's Jack's. And that came about because I was kind of writing my own deliverance through Ash, I was coming off of a divorce. And so I was writing a lot of marriage and trauma problems into their relationship and then finding ways for Ash to overcome them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense. And yeah, they're definitely lovable characters.
I hope so. That's the
I
one
mean,
of the biggest jobs of the writer, you know?
yeah, I'm about 3/4 through the book, but
Mhm.
it's been a great experience reading it so far.
Oh, well, thank you.
The next question I had you kind of answered is kind of how the pandemic affected you.
Yeah,
Yeah, you already answered.
yeah, well, I mean, to speak more on it, I think the pandemic, it affected me in a lot of similar ways that it affected all of us. I think it's this strange example of this one thing that pretty much everybody experienced, which is very rare. And so the themes that these pandemic stories like The Fear and others that are coming out are way more universal than you'd hope they would be.
It is interesting because the pandemic is definitely one of those situations that happen like once every 20 years. That it's kind of like when people go like, I was around when 9/11 happened, I was around when the pandemic happened, like I was around when like WW2 happened. It's one of those life defining things that happen that an entire society like will remember.
Yeah, one of those things where we all have similar experiences, but we all struggle through it differently,
Well, yeah, and I think even more so though, the pandemic, it's something that we all lived through instead of something that we were watching happen, like 9/11 20
personal.
years ago.
Yeah,
exactly. I can't think of any other world event that had such a profound effect globally.
That's a good point because when I was mentioning 9/11, 9/11 happened in New York and it shook the United States, but I was about 10 years old when it happened, and New York just felt like so far away. I live in Virginia, and even though it was still relatively close, New York City just still felt like an entirely different world away. But and I'd never really grasped exactly how intense it was when I was that age, but something like this pandemic, which literally affects everybody in the United States and the world, a whole different kind of story.
I was 11 for 9/11 and I was in California, and then on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11 when Osama was taken out, I was 21 and I was living in Manhattan, and so I got to hear all the stories from my neighbors who were there when it happened, and that was when it really clicked, like, oh, this was a very different experience.
Get a little more perspective.
Yeah, which just is not the case for the pandemic. A lot of the horror stories that really are the worst of the pandemic were widespread, and so a lot of us either saw it or lived through it.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw this over to Chris. If you have any questions about kitchen sink.
Oh yeah, because we both had two different books that we ended up going through. I got the kitchen sink.
And y'all really did your homework. That's amazing.
Yeah. I got the kitchen sink because I was looking through and I was like, all right, which one am I gonna want to read and buy? But I love short stories. That's how I love reading, like go through books. Because when I saw that it was a collection of short stories, I immediately I've shout out scary stories to tell in the dark way too many times on this podcast. But whenever I see a collection of short stories, scary stories, it makes me think of that. And that's all I read when I was in middle school. And so I was like, so I'm actually still, and the good thing about these short stories is that, because I have it on Kindle, so if I just go to the table of contents, I'd be like, oh, I feel like reading this one right now. And then I just click. So I'm jumping around. I don't have to read them in any particular order.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love short stories.
And the two that kind of jumped out at me so far of the ones that I've been reading were Gravitas Mortem and The Autopsy of a Marriage.
Oh, okay.
Which, Autopsy of a Marriage, did you write that one? Did that have your divorce? Was that present in that particular piece of writing as well? Is that one of the reasons?
Autopsy of a Marriage, or I'm sorry... Autopsy of A divorce? It's been a while.
I believe it was Autopsy of a Marriage.
Okay. Autopsy of a Marriage and The Kitchen Sink were the last two stories that I wrote for that collection. And they both very much are drawing from my own experience in that regard.
Because it felt very personal.
Yeah. I don't know what the experience is for Autopsy of a Marriage on a Kindle, because, that story, it's told in a unique format. It's written as like an
autopsy report. Yeah, it shows like redacted things and like filling out the form and all that business, which I thought was a really cool, interesting touch to add in a book.
Well, hey, I mean, the redacted element, that's another example of things being unseen, I guess, in a way.
You love playing with that notion of not seeing everything and just leaving things to imagination.
Well, I think a storyteller can really take away the magic if they just spell it all out,
I totally get that. That's we've said it before that me and Dave are wannabe writers as well, and maybe perhaps in my own writings I focus too much on what is said and what is explained when maybe I should be leaving certain things out intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, leaving a little bit more to the imagination.
Well, what's interesting about Kitchen Sink is you'll see in the introduction that I wrote for the collection that I've been just chasing this notion that the real monsters are inside of us.
Yes.
And I truly do think that idea hit me when I first saw The Mist.
Mm-hmm.
And it just clicked, where I was like, man, those monsters are a very small part of that movie. Most of the movie is
the people.
The people.
Yeah.
Even when the monsters are attacking, you have the people almost being far worse for themselves, for their own
The
safety.
Monsters were definitely a metaphor for the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when the pterodactyl-like creatures break in, not everything that happens is because of the monsters. A dude accidentally trips and catches his entire body on fire, and
we'll kill ourselves if we're scared enough.
Yeah. We don't really need the monsters' help,
But you talking about the monsters inside of us actually kind of goes a little bit with the Gravitas Mortem story. Mm-hmm. It's funny, I'm glad that you mentioned it in the story, because when I was reading it, I was like, wait a second, this story just started changing tense all of a sudden. I was like, that's not very good grammar. And then you mentioned it, and I was like, oh, that was done intentionally. The dude's losing his mind here. And it felt like a fever dream mixed with the Adjustment Bureau at one point.
Okay, yeah.
Well, when the two guys came in and said your wife has been arrested by the CIA, I was like, all right, who are these dudes? And and it just felt like and he said, no, I'm just part of a bad story. I was like, wow, this. It also kind of felt a little bit like, what's that? I don't have enough time to think about it. It's gonna bug the crap out of me. But another movie that I saw a while back. But that one was really good, and he kept saying, "It's my depression. It's your depression," and it feels like I'm in a hole, just getting dirt thrown on me and everything like that. And it was at the end, he's looking in the mirror. It's like looking into a mirror, he says.
Right.
That one was just a lot of fun. That one stuck out to me, along with the Autopsy of a Marriage, just because how fever dreamish it felt.
Right. Well, when I wrote Gravitas Mortem, there's 7 or 8 stories in that book that I wrote in the same week in 2017, and I was trying to write a new story every day. Mm-hmm. And one day, I was really struggling with my depression, and so one day it felt like I couldn't get out of bed. But I was determined to write a story every day, like I'd promised myself. And so I wrote at least the first part of that story, almost like forcing myself to move, because the depression felt like this physical weight. And
I totally get that.
Yeah. So like originally the tense changing, like you mentioned, from past to present or something. I don't remember how.
He switched from past tense to present tense.
Yeah. So originally I had not done that intentionally, but like my brain was just, real turgid and was not really running all that well. And so that story kind of became its own experiment. Like I was writing a story about depression while in the throes of it, and I'm really pleased with how it went. But man, it was like pulling teeth.
Oh, totally. When you now, not to get too personal about
Hmm.
depression and whatnot, but do you look back on that now? I don't know how your depression is now, but do you go back and look at stories that you wrote when you were in that period, and can you still identify with them, or does that just seem like a totally different time in your life that you're like, wow, I can't believe I felt like this way at some point?
You know, that's an interesting question. I definitely am much better, much healthier now, but I still remember it pretty clearly. It's hard to put myself back into that moment and remember the full effects, but I certainly remember what it was like.
It's like having scars that I remember what it was like, but it was definitely there.
Yeah, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that'll fade away with time. Maybe if you were to ask me this question 5 years from now, my answer would be no.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I really literally can't put myself back in that place. And in that
Yeah.
way, the story becomes this time capsule for me.
Time heals all wounds, as they say.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, those are the two stories that I wanted to kind of talk about in regards to Kitchen Sink. I still have the other half. There's more than just two, but I still got the other half.
Yeah.
Of the first half of the stories that I've read, those were the two that kind of popped out. And I still have the other half that I'm going to read in no particular order and then immediately go to Smileyland.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
I'm
for
excited for that. Yeah.
reading, guys. It's really flattering to talk about my work with readers.
Oh, it was a joy to read. And for those listening, you can find these books at your website. Am I correct?
Yeah, SpencerHamiltonBooks.com.
That's where I got them.
Yeah. That's where I got them too. You definitely need to go check them out, guys.
Now, shall I, Dave?
Yes. Let's get into the movie.
Okay, let's talk about The Mist right now from 2007, directed by Frank Darabont.
Hmm.
Yeah. Chris has a bunch of notes.
I've been talking to him about the past week, and I kind of told you a little bit earlier that I hated this movie when it first came out.
Hmm.
But now, from where it was a 2 out of 10, I give it about a 7 out of 10 now.
It's just a crazy flip. That's an underdog story right there.
Right.
I am man enough to admit that I was wrong in certain areas and that I was not open-minded about certain aspects when I was 17 when this came out.
Yeah.
16 or 17. 2000, yeah. So
We're 16. Yeah.
Do you remember what about the movie made you hate it so much?
100% I do. I have 2 pages, I told you.
Hey, okay.
Yeah. Oh,
We kind of alluded already to what the story is about. Seeing as this was your pick, briefly, would you want to, for anybody who might not have seen this movie, just briefly describe what the movie is about?
Yeah, it's a small town in Maine, and this mysterious thick mist comes rolling in, and the story follows a large group of people who have taken to sheltering in a grocery store, and you discover that there are things in the mist. And as I said before, though, the true horror is trying to navigate the interpersonal relations between the people inside the store.
I would say that the villain of the movie isn't necessarily the stuff in the mist, but actually fear itself.
Yeah, I'd
people
say
in the
that's
grocery
accurate.
store. Yeah.
That's absolutely it.
So I wouldn't have said this years ago, but I recommend going to see it. Not to be confused with The Fog, even though The Fog also is very much a mist coming in and monsters in it.
Also,
I've
not to be
never seen The
confused
Fog.
with the Mist TV show, which
Oh yeah,
I would recommend staying away from.
it is. Don't subject yourself to it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the second half was great, but I only got through the first half before given up.
Now, you said the fog. You said you never saw The Fog, Dave. Now, that's a John Carpenter movie.
No, I've never seen it.
I had to pause the movie 2 minutes into watching The Mist because I had to appreciate that the painter, David, is the main character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's sitting there, he's an artist, and in the background you see a Thing poster, which I immediately, because The Thing is my favorite horror movie.
Oh, God.
Now, this might be a stretch, but I was like, that's a reference to John Carpenter, who directed The Fog from 1980. And also to further compare to The Thing is also about a group of people trapped in a location and turning on each other with monsters on the loose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also about not trusting everybody. So I don't know if that was done intentionally. It has to be. That's such a blatant thing to put out there.
Yeah.
No,
Nice little Easter egg for people.
It's really great. And I mean, if you paused it, like you said, then you'd see, like, you know, they also had a painting that could have been and then the main painting from The Dark Tower with Roland Deschain. But yeah, I think that they definitely, in the beginning of the shot, they give the focal point to The Thing. And I think you're right on the money that was intentional because of the parallel themes.
That gave it 1 point because you were asking me what made it go from a 2 to a 7. I didn't notice that when I first watched it over 10 years ago. So already I appreciate that reference. I gave it an extra point. So now we're up to a 3 out of 7.
Hey, coming back.
We're slowly off the bat. It already is better than when I first remembered it. The two big things that I hated when I first watched it, but I've since come to appreciate why, was Marcia Harden's character, who was the religious zealot woman.
She's my favorite character.
She's your favorite character? She was the one
She's my favorite character, yeah.
Now, when I watched this movie, I was watching it at a friend's house with like 2 or 3 other friends, and we paused every 5 minutes whenever that woman got finished talking because we just kept going, man, I freaking hate this woman. I hate this woman so much. Like, I want to kill this chick. And now, and I still do, but at this, but now I'm like, that's the point of her character. If she's you're not supposed to like her. And I've since grown in my opinion of movies, like especially if there's a character I hate. If that is what the actor's job is to do, then that woman did her job fantastically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
She hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
I
just respect her power grab.
I mean, so as you said, the hatred that the audience is supposed to feel for her, it's so unrelenting. You know, she is just constantly the worst. And it just gets worse and worse as the movie goes on, to the point where when she does get her comeuppance, it's satisfying. Probably the one time when you just want to jump up and cheer,
It felt when she died, I finally felt like I could take a breath of fresh air. Like it just finally, as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, you being here was just so exhausting. But yeah, that's just because that's a thing in movies that really just pisses me off, is like religious zealots who, not religious people, they're fine, but people who use fear and people being afraid and then mixing that with religion to get them on their side and get them to do things that they're doing out of fear.
Yeah, it was a straight power grab, man.
That's just like one of the few things in movies that I know that it's part of the movie. It just really pissed me off, but it was done well and it did what it was supposed to, and I acknowledge that.
Well, and what's interesting, not to keep bringing up the pandemic, but I think that the last year and a half has shown us how almost prophetic the portrayal of religious fear-mongering is in this movie.
Oh yeah, you can definitely see parallels with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But another funny thing about Carmody, about Mrs. Carmody, is a couple of years before this movie came out was when I read my first Stephen King novel. I walked into a Borders and it was the release week for Cell.
Okay.
Oh,
I bought that release week too.
There you go.
It's one of my favorite
I walked
Stephen
into
King
the store
books,
and was like, well, there's blood on the cover. And I know that my mom doesn't like Stephen King, so I'm going to buy this. And in that book, there's another, it's a side character who's only in it for a brief amount of time, but there's this other woman who is a religious zealot, Bible thumper, um, and one of the main characters, I think her name is Alice, goes up and slaps her and is like, she just she won't stand for it. And that so affected my 15-year-old heart.
Stephen King likes to sprinkle that in his books.
Yeah, well, so then I saw this, and almost exactly the same plot point happened, and I just assumed, man, religion must have hurt Stephen King at some point. But
something happened,
right?
Yeah, it is just I've read, I think, about 55 of his books now. Not all of them, but and these are the only two clear examples of that happening that I can think of. So it's funny to me that those were the first two that I experienced, and was like, man, Stephen King must hate that. But he doesn't. He just understands what kind of power can be wielded with it,
how dangerous it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she was one of the big things that I didn't like initially, that I've come to respect. The other person being Captain Holt, Andre Braugher.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because I'm so used to seeing him in Brooklyn Nine-Nine as a very serious face that I'm not used to seeing him emote so much, and also just be unlikable in this thing. When he they were getting along in the very beginning, and then when we first start seeing these glimpse of these monsters in the form of a giant spiked tentacle that ends up killing the bag boy, and you see the tentacle in the back, and he's like, and they're trying to explain it to him, hey, look, come back here, we there's something out there, and come over here, and he's not having it. He's just like, you guys are just trying to you're just trying to play a trick on me, and blah 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 blah. And I just remember watching it, being so upset, going like, yes, Andre Braugher, this whole thing has been an elaborate setup to make you look like an idiot. In fact, we bought 100 mist machines and actually placed them all around the city and caused like thousands of dollars worth of damage, all because we wanted to make you look like an idiot.
I'm glad I'm not the only one with that same reaction. Like, seriously? Like,
and then but again, it just goes into how fear was like making people think of certain, because then when he starts rallying people, he's like, you're already trying to like get my people into, and she's like, what do you talk about your people? They're just people. What do you talk about your people and stuff? Like, it just, I mean, I understand that he was also dealing with fear in his own way. He was in denial of that anything was going on, or just completely. I mean, he represents definitely the kind of people, they have their mind set up and they're not going to be changed.
Change it, yeah.
So that character reaction was something you hated when you saw it as a teenager, or now?
Yeah, and no, as a teenager. Now I understand. I understand why he's acting a certain. It still is irritating, but it didn't piss me off like when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Right. I think as a teenager, I totally understand that sense of, we have more black and white understandings of reality when we're a teenager, and then as we grow up, we realize that's a little naive,
people who are in the store are acting like how people would act, kind of. Right. I mean, when people get scared, they don't think rationally, and Andre Braugher's character, he was reacting to fear with, he needed to keep telling himself, all right, this is all justified. There's a logical explanation for everything. It's easier for me to believe that you guys are just trying to make me look stupid than me going back there and seeing there's a tentacle monster.
Yeah, having that be the lawyer character was, I think, really insightful. Having this rational, clinical mind just go along the edge of Occam's razor and say, hey, which is more likely, that there are monsters or that townies are trying to get back at the out-of-towner big shot lawyer? You're
going to go with the idea that you can justify in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, and luckily, the first several times that I watched this movie, Brooklyn Nine-Nine didn't even exist, so I didn't have to like compare those two versions of Andre Braugher.
Yeah. Now, the stuff that me and my friends would always make fun of, you have this guy. Oh, which by the way, there are a lot of actors from the Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption in this movie.
Old Darabont, yeah.
And I didn't realize that until I re-looked at who directed it. I was like, oh, it's Frank Darabont. No wonder that's why you have all these Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile actors in here. That's probably why he was able to get all these big name actors, because he worked with them before. So I thought that was pretty
he
cool.
Also, my partner's showing me The Walking Dead right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of Walking Dead characters in there too.
Yeah, and Darabont wrote and directed the first couple episodes, and is actually the one who spent years trying to get that show made. So
are you serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know
That dude just has an eye for good material.
He does. He really does.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, Carol's in this, and so was Andrea. And
yep.
So everything is starting to make sense now.
Yeah.
I had absolutely no idea, but that's really, really cool.
I've read that Thomas Jane, who plays David in The Mist, was actually attached to be the lead of The Walking Dead. Rick Grimes? Yeah, Rick Grimes, the sheriff's deputy. But it took so long that once AMC picked it up, he was off. And, as much as I think Thomas Jane just fucking crashes and smashes this role, like is just perfect for The Mist, I can't see him giving Rick Grimes the kind of like nuance that he needs.
I can kind of see it, but kind of not. Like, I can see it in some aspects of him being like the stern leader, that somebody that, you can look at Thomas Jane and be like, all right, that's a guy I will follow. I will follow this guy's lead. But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know though. He might not get a lot of the little nuances and the intricacies of the character. Like,
yeah. I mean, not to say that he can't. I mean, his acting in this, I am still to this day just blown away at the cast as a whole. Just their reactions to everything feels so real, but especially Thomas Jane's, the way that he shows his character processing those final moments of the film, just blows my mind.
He went through like just so much in his head, in his eyes. He's sad. It also kind of felt like there were certain parts where he like paused and he's like, it kind of didn't feel like reality, like it didn't happen. Like he's telling himself, no, I didn't do that. I just imagine I did not just do that. And just going back and forth from angry to sad to denial, just like all within just a couple of minutes. And
and I mean, not to jump straight to the end of the movie, but
that's cool, because that's where I was going next.
Going on Thomas Jane's performance in that moment, when he's sitting there having emptied the gun, he's saying, I think he says it once or twice, he says ow, and it's just the idea that what he did is a physical pain to himself. Just really affected me.
I just want to get to one point, like you said, all the reactions kind of felt real. And I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps.
Oh, okay.
So when Private Jessup was getting like strung up and he's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. That's so real to me, because someone who's coming up lower ranks have no idea what's going on. Civilians might not know that.
Are you talking about before they turned on him?
No, like when they were getting ready to kill him. And
that's what before they threw him outside.
He's talking about how, like, even among him and his fellow soldiers, all he was going on were rumors.
Yeah, and it's like, there's times in the military where we're doing stuff.
Yeah,
but there's no way that he could, know. And obviously it's easier for them to just put all the blame onto one person rather than listen to him out.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to just not giving the audience a complete explanation of what's going on. It's much more exciting to give, well, maybe this happened, but we don't know, and just let the audience fill in the blanks.
We still don't even know kind of how it is. I mean, we know one person's story has ended, but the overall big picture of, we don't know, what happened with the rest of the monsters. Like,
we don't know how far it spread,
But it looks like I guess Dave had an issue with his connection. I see he left, but we can continue talking. He'll hop back in.
He was so offended by by this movie not giving us all the answers that he just left. I get it. I get it.
you know, 10 years ago, teenage me would totally be on board with you, Dave. We totally get it. But going off of the ending, or sticking with the ending bit, that was the other thing that really pissed me off. I hated how it ended, but now I couldn't see it ending any other way, because and it's so funny because I watched this with my folks. I tend to there he is. He's back. I'll talk about it in just a second as soon as he pops in.
Welcome back to the land of the living, bud.
We didn't know you hated it that much.
My power went out, guys, so now I'm on my phone.
Oh snap! It's that storm.
It's that storm. Don't go into the mist. Did you want to finish your thought?
Yeah. So like when you're in the military lower ranks, like a lot of times we're doing stuff and we don't know why. Like, so there could be a whole bunch of like secret experiments going on base, and someone who's a private will have no idea that that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And like
power go out again.
Whoops. Man.
Poor Dave. Poor Dave.
The military thought he was about to, spill some secrets.
Spill some secrets. So, Dave, I hope you're okay.
Cut him.
Well, hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
You want to try a third time?
You know what? I think we should just move on at this point.
The military knows you're about to divulge their secrets. But
exactly.
But when you cut out, like, we were kind of talking a little bit about the ending. I was saying how much I hated the ending when I was a teenager, but I enjoy it now. I not enjoy it, but I appreciate it now. And it's funny, when I watched this with my folks, because I tend to watch the movie I'm going to review with my folks, since it's Halloween and they're into the Halloween season too. My mom said as soon as she realized that it was a Stephen King story, and as soon as they got to the car and they were driving away, she was like, I bet I know exactly how this is going to end. She was like, this is a Stephen King story, and Stephen King does not like happy endings.
Well, I mean, what's hilarious about that is Stephen King didn't even write this ending.
He didn't?
No,
really? I didn't know that.
So the novella The Mist, it's in his collection Skeleton Crew. It's written as epistolary. It's David writing down what has happened, and they're holed up in a hotel, and they've been traveling for days and still haven't reached the end of the mist, and they've started to hear things on the radio though, so he's hopeful that they'll find a way out of this mist and that it ends. So it's actually a pretty hopeful ending in the original book,
whereas this one
and this one, I mean,
spoiler alert, by the way, for anybody, if you guys don't want to hear spoilers, too bad, because we're about to spoil the ending right now. But
yeah, I mean, honestly, I implore anyone listening, if you have not seen the movie to the end, please turn this off
and then come back and subscribe,
and then come back. Yes, but so this ending, Frank Darabont wrote this ending, and the studio said, no fucking way, you can't do that ending.
You can't shoot a kid in the head as an ending.
And so they held him hostage with the budget, and I so desperately wish that he had found a way to use practical effects for some of these monster sequences. Because the CGI doesn't really hold up.
I'm a sucker for practical effects.
Same. I mean, the thing here. But yeah, so like the studio said, hey, we'll give you the budget you need if you change that ending. And he said no, and just made it with the money that they'd give him. And
kudos to him.
Ending. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, well, we're going to hold you hostage. Guys. What was that?
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Do you guys think he gets charged with 4 counts of murder?
No.
I mean, no. I think that any kind of system has essentially been put on pause.
You know, you're thinking like assisted suicide charges there?
No, I think I'm fairly certain, especially the military, because you see the 2 military officers come up at the very end, and they're sitting there and they're looking at him and looking at the car. You can put 2 and 2 together that this guy, because what he did was a mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And I am sure that the military, looking at the car and the bodies inside and looking at him and how much he's freaking out, I'm fairly certain they were able to put two and two together.
Yeah, but still, like, assisted suicide's still, like, illegal, though.
Yeah, but like Spencer said,
like
I don't think there's any,
yeah.
I don't think there's any kind of like a system law and order going on right now. This is like, hey, let's get these dimension creatures out of here first.
Yeah, and also, like, if you wanted to write a sequel to this ending, I think the more tragic path to take, and I mean, it's horror, so you always want to take the more tragic path, would be that he's not convicted, because I think that getting some kind of punishment or consequence for what he did would be a mercy to him, and just getting off scot-free and expected to go on with his life would be the worst outcome for him.
He would probably want to get punished in some way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that he would probably end up killing himself if they wrote the sequel. I mean, because he tried to already. I don't think that he would be able to live with it.
Yeah,
I don't think he's living very much longer past the ending of this movie.
He's either going to take that route, or he's just going to become a, fucking mist monster mercenary, where he just tries to do the most harm to them.
Speaking of the ending, real quick before I forget, you see how when he's out and the military is going by and you see that truck full of people, those were the civilians from the store, right?
No,
not the first one. The first one had the lady who left the store and no one would go with her on it. I think the second truck might have been from the store.
Because I think that was when I was watching it, I think that was the biggest kick in the nuts for me, was that I thought that was the group of people from the store, so that they got saved while he had to go through all of that.
Yeah, I think that would have been pretty powerful, but I don't remember ever seeing any of the store people in the truck. So I think that was left for us to decide. All
right, I'm gonna in my mind, I'm gonna decide that they didn't get rescued because they didn't deserve it. That makes me feel a little bit better. Yeah, that gigantic creature at the end, it stomped on the store on the way over. Yes, that's how I rewrote the story. I did write in my notes here. I said Thomas Jane is not actually the hero of this story. Toby Jones is. Ollie. Ollie is my favorite character in this entire movie.
Ollie's a badass, dude.
Ollie is the best.
That dude never misses a shot. He's always useful. He has witty remarks. He's what every retail worker daydreams about. As soon as as soon as the crisis happens, he's the one with the gun. He tells his supervisor to go fuck himself, and then he starts killing monsters. He keeps a cool head while he does it.
Yeah, I love that part where he's like, "I shot her." I would have done it. I had to. Yeah, that's why I said thanks.
He said, "I shot her," and Thomas Jane David just says, "Thank you," and then he says, "I had no choice. I wouldn't have done it if I had a choice."
That's why I said thank you.
Yeah, that's why I said thank you.
But that was more Toby or Ollie. I usually call them by their actor names, but that's why Ollie. He was saying it out loud because I think he was more just trying to make himself feel better.
Yeah, that's absolutely it.
But it's really funny because, first off, Toby never misses a shot. He hits his target every single time.
State champion
of 1980, whatever he said. And when there was that pterodactyl creature, and he had the shot lined up, and the kid was also like kind of lined up. My dad, when he was watching, he was like, "Oh no, don't tell me the kid's gonna get shot." And I was like, "No, not yet."
Oh no.
I didn't say that, but I wanted to. I was like, "Oh Dad, if you're upset if this kid's about to get shot now, you're really not gonna like the ending."
Oh damn.
Yeah.
Dude, the scene somewhere in the third act where the kid, Bill, says to his dad, "Promise you won't let the monsters get me."
No matter what.
Yeah, knowing what the ending is.
That makes that all the more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, "Oh, kid." And his dad kept his word. I will say this too. Now, Dave, what is it that I happen to bring up every single movie of every single week, apparently?
Your hatred for kid actors.
No, not hatred. I don't hate kid actors. Stop saying I hate kid actors. I said nothing but good things about the kids from Trick or Treat last week.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
Chris of Body Bag Podcast hates kids.
Hates children. That's gonna be on my tombstone. Here lies Chris Thomas, hated children.
That's great.
But the first thing I said when the kid popped up, one of my first notes was, I said, whether or not this kid is any good or not, we'll have to see. But that kid is stoked to be here. I was like, this kid is, you can tell that this kid is happy that he's getting work. He is happy to be on set. He is, and I think this kid was probably my favorite kid so far of the movies that we've watched. This is what, episode 9 or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like episode 9.
8 or 9.
Yeah.
He's probably my favorite kid actor that we've seen so far.
Well, I think that's a testament to the director. I think when it comes to kids, as far as I understand it, a lot of times the performance the kid gives is totally a reflection of the director knowing how to work with kids.
Can I just say that I totally agree? And again, I don't hate kids because I've said before, I've said before that I cut kids some slack because they're just doing what they're told when it comes to these acting scenes. But sometimes
the kid in this one, to your point, the kid in this one, he really does nail it. He gives the performance that it needs.
In fact, the kid is more there as a driving force for the main actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
He's mainly there as a motivational tool for Thomas Jane to do what he's doing, because the only reason he stayed as long as he did was because he didn't want to bring his kid out there in the mist. Ultimately, the reason why he ends up leaving is because he wants to keep his kid safe.
That's a good point, and I think that brings up probably the only thing that I truly don't like about this movie, which is David going to the pharmacy. It drives me insane.
Because there's no reason for him to do that.
Yeah, I was like, dude, you are here to protect your kid. Why the fuck are you leaving him on a mission that so far every other mission has led to death?
Especially leaving him in the store where the crazy religious woman is.
Exactly.
Right.
It just, man.
I mean, I kind of get it because
I guess
it's like
he really, trusted what's her name, Amanda?
Oh yeah,
the woman who was with him at then. I guess he really trusted her by then.
But then again, she's still a little naive because early on, both Thomas Jane and Ollie were trying to explain I'm going to keep calling her Andrea. Keep wanting to tell her, hey, look, this woman is obviously riling up people. She has 4 followers now. By tomorrow, she'll have 8. And it's so funny that they called her that her followers were calling her a prophet when Ollie and Thomas Jane prophesized that she's going to start sacrificing people.
Yeah.
Which she does.
Yes, she tries to sacrifice the son.
Well, but they also sacrificed the military guy.
Yeah.
Stabbed him and threw him outside.
Expiation.
Yeah, I love that dude. That dude who has absolutely no spine, also from Shawshank Redemption, who, hey man, I'm sorry I got that kid killed. And then
right.
And then immediately
I don't see any boogie monster out there, and then
man, his character is done so well.
I laughed at him. That was the only time I got a genuine laugh, was when he was part of the religious group going, expiation.
Yeah.
But it's perfect. Like he's laughing and cocky at the very beginning, and then realizes how dumb he is, and then when he sees what he sees in the pharmacy, that is essentially what breaks him and sends him running to something that he can hold on to, which is the crazy expiation prophet.
Again, it's all about what's easiest for you to. What's the easiest thing that you can grasp onto that's going to get you through this situation?
Yeah, the human psychology of all these different characters is so well portrayed. There's so many different versions of how we would react in this scenario, that
it makes it all the more infuriating that the people that do keep a level head are the ones that nobody wants to listen to.
Yeah. I mean, hey, that's the real world.
Life. Ain't that life?
Ain't that life.
Unfortunately. Anyway, I think that's all of my notes. But given all of this, I enjoyed it way more in my second viewing, as my tastes have been a little bit more refined, and I realized that certain people act a certain way, and they're supposed to make you upset. And even the ending, I've actually grown to like and appreciate way more than I did the beginning part. So that's why it goes a good 7 out of 10 for me. It's a good movie. Go give it a watch.
Yeah. I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay, what do you think of the ending, David?
Well, the ending for me, I think it's kind of perfect for this movie because it's just kind of like that dreadful ending. This isn't the type of movie that you should have a happy ending for.
Yeah, that's true.
The main character has been getting nothing but like crapped on the entire movie, that even his act of a kindness killing, his merciful killing, is a heartbreak in itself, in that he's doing everything right in the story, maybe other than going to the pharmacy, but he was doing that for a good reason.
Yeah.
He was doing
But
everything
getting
right.
all the wrong result.
He was trying to help a guy who got burnt up. And that even to the point where he kills the other 4 survivors out of a kindness, and that is met with such a horrible, like, that dude gets no kind of reward for keeping a level head, keeping his son safe, making sure his son didn't suffer, and trying to help out those who were suffering in the store. None of his good deeds were ever rewarded, but only punished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it as, I guess you could look at this as a moral tale, and his ultimate sin was trying to control the situation at every turn,
Mm-hmm.
and at every turn when he would try to exert his control and have the people do what he believed they should do, the consequences were usually pretty bad. And they were consequences that he knew were coming, but he almost pushed it closer to that result by being the one who wants to go to the pharmacy despite probably needing to stay with his son. But he's the macho man who has to be the leader. And
Which,
I think,
sorry,
yeah, no, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, which even in the end, if he just let things be, instead of being the one that made the decision, if he just let things play out, then the military would have shown up on time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that way, Mrs. Carmody is his foil, because they're both essentially they've both put themselves in the leader position, and I think they both have disastrous results because of it. They got what they want, but in a way that they did not want.
But yeah, it's one of those movies that don't watch it and then get your day started, because you'll just feel kind of like feel weird and awful for the rest of the day. But you need to watch this movie and then go watch some Looney Tunes or something, because you'll need a little bit of an uplift afterwards.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, watch some inspirational videos or something.
Yeah, I think I followed this movie with Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Perfect.
That was Captain Holt's origin story. He left town and then he started a new life. And I guess
I like that. Yeah.
All right, at this time, I don't think we did it for the Tingler, but this one has plenty of movie deaths in it. And each week we try to have the kill of the movie or death of the movie. So Dave, why don't we start with you? What would you say was your kill of the movie?
Probably when the bag boy got offed.
Ooh, Norm.
Yeah.
Poor Norm.
His death was so drawn out and rough to watch, but that's what makes it so good is.
And when Thomas Jane...
It didn't need to happen, yeah.
And Thomas Jane was like, yeah, he was a stupid kid. What was your excuse for letting him do it?
Yeah.
I was like, that's a good point. I mean, he's just a dumb teenager. Dumb teenager's going to do what a dumb teenager's going to do. So the adults are the ones who should have been like saying, hey, don't let the teenager go do it. I'll do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What about you there, Spencer? Did you have a favorite kind of kill of the movie?
Oh, man. I'm going to take it in a bit of a different direction and say that my favorite kill of the movie is when what's the old school teacher lady's name?
Which one? Is that not Carol?
No, she's the really old. Irene. She's the really old school teacher who introduces David to Amanda. But anyways, I think my favorite kill of the movie is when she lights that spider on fire in the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Just lights anything that has to do with spider death, I'm all for. So
yeah. And I guess in that same scene, just seeing the spiders burst out of that MP. It's just
that was my kill of the movie, because that is the absolutely worst way I could ever think of going out.
Yes.
Because I hate spiders, and you got to figure that guy was there probably for a while, and he's stuck in a web surrounded by spider creatures who laid eggs inside his stomach and was just basically getting eaten alive from. And you got to figure that was probably slow. He was probably there for hours.
Yeah.
And that is the absolute worst way I could ever think of going out. So that
and when
MP's death.
He falls and his back just bursts. It's probably like just the most like gross visual of the movie.
Yeah.
Him and the guy who got caught on fire probably had the worst deaths, because that guy it's because they stuck around for so long in agonizing pain. And originally that was going to be my death if it wasn't for the spiders. But I had written down, originally I was going to call the guy who tripped on the gasoline and lit himself on fire a moron, but I probably would have worse luck, and I would have probably died in an even dumber way. I would have been the guy who tripped over a bag of dog food and broke my neck on a cash register or something. Like, not. But I was just like, how did you were sitting there messing with the gas bucket? How do you trip over the gas bucket you were just messing with and light yourself a fire? And nobody thought to think, hey, we're dealing with gas around here. Maybe we should keep some fire extinguishers on the ready.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I think really pisses me off about David going to the pharmacy is this guy is just covered in burns and is begging to die.
Yeah.
And again, David just inserts himself as the leader who will choose for everybody. And he's like, nope, I'm gonna go to the pharmacy and turn one death into
a couple more.
More. It's just it's probably a realistic response, and that is what I love about this movie is how the characters really do choose the way that I think real people would. But damn, it just fuck David is what I'm saying.
Because we the viewers are sitting there like, just give the guy some pills to overdose on, or or give the guy
just put a bullet in his dome, call it
into suffering. He's I mean, because he gave because that also goes into. Now that I think about it, David was willing to give his own son that mercy killing, but he wasn't going to give that dude his.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Because it was a totally different story when it's like he doesn't want his son to suffer, but he was willing to let that guy suffer when he's sitting there begging for death.
Yeah, and so I just looked it up, and it looks like, and this is a very quick Google search, so maybe my facts are wrong, but it looks like assisted suicide just became an option for terminally ill people in Maine.
I think I had read about in Maine. Where this takes place?
In Maine, yeah. So, like 12 years too late, but...
Right.
I mean, they have monsters and Pennywise and everything they have to deal with. I think that they
deserve to have assisted suicide up there.
I'm not going to get political or anything on this show, but it's Derry, Maine. There's a bunch of monsters. There's so many monsters over down that way. You should have an out.
Yeah, right.
Exactly, yeah. But, so you guys rated it 7 out of 10 and 6.5 out of 10. I almost want to say that my rating would be 9 out of 10, but I think that's just because I don't want to appear like this unapologetic fanboy of the movie.
Oh, don't worry. Appear, because I give, we all have our favorites. Like I said, mine's The Thing. I'd say that would be a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, just wait till we review Scream. We have nothing but great things to say about it.
Would you say
The Thing is also my favorite horror movie? But like, if I were to make top 5 lists, I think that The Mist would be on that list every single time.
Do you think that it would have been a 10 out of 10 if they used practical effects?
Absolutely, yeah. That's not really something I cared about, 10 years ago when I saw this, but
Yeah.
But now, like, with all that time for the CGI to age badly, I really wish they'd gone that route.
The instant I realized how much I loved prosthetics in movies was when I saw the I think it was the prequel to The Thing with Mary Elizabeth Winstead when that came out in like 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
After I watched that movie, that's when I was like, this movie sucks. I miss the old prosthetic effects. This movie stinks.
I mean, hey, it gave you a direct example of why practical effects are better,
It was a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I have to say about The Mist. It was a fun experience, and I'm glad I got to see it again, and I was really excited. Is there any other final thoughts that any of you guys want to give on the movie?
We just about covered it.
I just, going back to the beginning of this episode where we were talking about like Jaws and fear being scarier off the page or off the screen. I think that this movie does that so well, like even though it does show that gigantic monster that's stepping over them, that's like, a couple 100 feet tall at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The camera spends the most time on their faces as they're staring up.
Oh yeah.
And you just see the hope dying in their eyes, and it's so terrifying to see how it affects them rather than see, what it is. And this movie chooses that route again and again, and I love that idea that what's scary is the unknown.
Indeed it is, and that's a great way to summarize this movie.
All right. Well, once again, Spencer, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
If you want to give out your socials so people listening can follow you.
Yeah, so on Instagram, which is where I spend most of my time, my handle is Nerdy Wordsmith. And on Twitter, where I go occasionally, if the mood strikes me, I'm at S Hamilton Books.
And everybody be sure to go check out his website and check out Smiley World. Is that the name of the book coming out?
Is Smileyland. You can get that on SpencerHamiltonBooks.com. And it's been getting really great reception. So I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. So go grab that free copy.
All right. And if you're listening on the Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a 5-star rating. It really helps us out.
And I believe next week we have another special guest coming up.
Yes, we do. Tag. He is a rapper. You go ahead and search him up on Spotify. Music is great.
We have yet to figure out what...
I think he said either Jaws or Aliens, so...
Ooh.
Oh, so we'll be talking some classics next week then.
Exactly. I'm excited for it.
All right. And I guess that about wraps it up for here at the Body Bag Podcast.
All right. Everybody have a great week.